to This Week at the Lake, the news and feature show about the events and people of interest to you, the residents of Lake Monticello. This program is originating from the Hi and Muriel Badler studio. And for the Lake Monticello Broadcasting Group, I'm Mona Orange, and I'm so pleased to be your host. Today's show is about Women's Health Virginia, a not-for-profit organization that I have worked with and now that I volunteer for because of their efforts to improve women's health and girls' health in Virginia. The chair of this organization, Mimi Bender, is an unsung hero, and I would like you, our viewers, to learn more about her and Women's Health Virginia. So welcome, Mimi.
Thank you, Mona. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm so impressed with your dedication to women's health, and I can't wait to share your story and the story of the organization. So let's start by telling a little bit about when you came to Central Virginia, how you got here, and a little bit about your background.
Sure. I'm an attorney, and my husband and I moved here 25 years ago this spring. And I was practicing law, doing consulting with organizations, mainly in Washington, D.C., and then began to get involved with issues here in Central Virginia. Through the League of Women Voters, got involved with health policy and other local issues. And through that effort, got on the State League of Women Voters Board and continued working on social policy issues. And that really led to my getting in a position where Women's Health Virginia got started.
Okay, so Women's Health Virginia is a statewide organization, and we're going to see what that logo looks like, a little bit about what it's like. But you started it almost 20 years ago. So you moved to DC 25, and 20 years ago you started this organization. What was going on at that time, 20 years ago?
Well, before that period, in the 1990s, there was a recognition that women's health hadn't gotten the attention that it deserved, that women were in fact different from men in ways other than the fact that they have babies, that women do have different indicators for different diseases, that drugs that work on men sometimes don't work on women, and
or
vice
not
versa.
At least in the same way.
Right, and sometimes drugs that work on women don't work on men. And at the federal government level, there was this recognition in the scientific community, and in the Department of HHS in Washington, they established offices of women's health in each of the HHS branches. There was a woman in the General Assembly here in Virginia, Judy Connolly, and she said, "What's going on in Virginia?" And after she asked that question and asked the Department of Health to do a study about the state of women's health in Virginia, she introduced a resolution supporting a women's health initiative to work to improve women's health and bring together the public and private sector, look at education and prevention and research. And it was sort of I hate to say apple pie and motherhood resolution. Somebody's got to do something. Right. We're not saying who, we're not saying when, we're not saying how, but go with it. And Judy and I started working together to figure out what this women's health initiative might be. And after a few years of talking to lots of people about what they were doing to improve women and girls' health and wellness, and what needs they saw, we decided that the best thing to do would be to set up an independent nonprofit organization so that we could bring together all of these actors, organizations in the public and private sector who cared about these issues, and get them to work together, hopefully work together in a new and more effective way. So that's what we did, and we incorporated, and we got our 501c3 status from the IRS, and then set out on this path that I never would have thought I'd still be doing at this point.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up that, other organizations, because I'm wondering if some of our viewers are thinking, well, how is Women's Health Virginia different from some other organizations? Because there are organizations that work on lots of things, whether it's heart disease or breast cancer or whatever.
That sort of leads into how we're different, because those organizations are working on one issue usually, one disease, one age group, one local area's problems, or even one health care issue like access to health care or health insurance, but not looking across the board and looking at how so many of these issues are related and how people who are working on these different issues might be effective working together. And so we've stepped back sort of and looked at women's health as a lifelong process, starting with prenatal care and then going to girls, right, teens, young women, midlife women, older women, looking at mental and physical health as important components so that health has to be looked at comprehensively. And then looking at the non-medical issues that affect how women develop health behaviors and attitudes and take care of their health, how they use health information. There are just so many issues like education and economics and transportation and childcare that
and
are
insurance
and insurance
and getting sick days from work.
Exactly.
You could be sick, but if you can't get time off to go see the doctor. That
is a perfect example. We hear of women who take their children to the pediatrician, but that uses up all their sick days, and so they never make the appointment for themselves. And they don't stop to think, well, if I don't take care of myself, I might not be here for my little boy or girl.
Right. So that's a huge order to look at all these things. So how does Women's Health Virginia approach that challenge?
Sure. First of all, we're very careful to identify what other people are doing. We don't want to duplicate efforts that these other organizations are making because they're doing great stuff, and it's limited resources, especially for our organization. So after we identify what other people are doing, we also try to look at cross-cutting issues, cutting-edge issues. What aren't people thinking about that we think they might think about? And we do education, we do community-based research, and then we really work to build this collaboration that I've mentioned of working with other organizations.
Okay, so let's start by looking at education, something dear to my heart. Who do you educate and how do you do it?
Okay. I would say there are two main groups. The primary group are the people who can take the information we give them and take it back to their patients, their communities, and their clients. So the health professionals and education professionals. And when we talk about health professionals, it's not just doctors. There are a lot of players in the game. Nurses, nurse practitioners, social workers, dietitians, health educators, and then there are all of these other organizations, their leadership, we want to get information to them so they can develop programs based on the information that we're giving them. And then we do some programs for what I would call the consumer level, for people who are not professionals but just care about their own health or their family's health. But we're realistic. As a small organization, we can't be in every community. Right. So we feel we can be much more effective working with people who are then, if you want to say, on the ground level around the state.
Sure. And so let's talk a little bit about your annual conference, because you have an annual conference that you do every year. This year's annual conference is on Friday, June 5th, and right. I think we're going to bring up, there it goes. And so let's talk about this conference a little bit, because you're talking about a topic that is very dear to my heart and also to a lot of women, sure to men also, but I think even more so to women. And it's not a conference about body image, but it's really a conference about women and their relationship to food and their relationship to women. Which I think we talk about one a lot, but not the other at all. So what are some of the topics you're going to be having at this conference, and who are the people that come in and actually speak to people at this conference?
Oh, the conference is looking, as the graphic showed, women in food beyond BMI. That we're not just looking about weight, because that is an issue that concerns many women. But we wanted to step back and look at issues that affect all females. And as you said, it affects males too, but we're really focusing in, as we always do, on the females. And we're looking at biologic issues, such as how genetics plays a role in our food choices, our taste, our weight gain patterns, and things like that. We're looking at other biological issues, such as hormones and metabolism and the endocrine system. We're looking at emotional issues, emotional eating, cravings. What do we eat when we get stressed? Because from my own experience and talking to other people as we plan this conference, when women are stressed, they reach for things they might not otherwise eat.
Right.
We're also looking at how we perceive food and how that affects how much we eat or what our food choices are. And then finally, we're looking at our busy schedules and busy lives and how that affects the feeding patterns of women and,
right.
and the food choices, both looking at things like snacking, eating at your desk, whether you eat alone or with other people, and then what sleep deprivation or sleep disruption means for your food intake. And then finally, to get some positive stuff at the end, we want to focus on how food can be a positive factor for health and wellness.
Right, because good food is important for a good body.
Exactly. And the speakers are great. I mean, they're coming from, we have one woman coming from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to talk about, what do women eat and what are we learning about trends and how is that affecting government policy, including things like the dietary guidelines. But then we have the rest of the speakers are from Virginia because we really like to highlight the homegrown talent.
Right.
And they'll be from UVA, Virginia Tech, VCU, Virginia Tech Carilion Medical School, and a couple of people who are not affiliated with the major academic institutions.
Well, I think you know already I'm going to be there, and there was something on there at the bottom about registration, and at the end we're going to be putting up another graphic with your website so people can find out more information about it at that time as well. But the date is June 5th, right?
Right, Friday, June 5th, and it's here in Charlottesville. We should emphasize that. Well,
Right,
not here in
right.
Charlottesville, but up the
Right.
road in Charlottesville.
Because although you're a statewide organization, your office is in Charlottesville, but the conferences aren't always in Charlottesville, and luckily this year it is because it's one I definitely want to be at, and so I'm glad it'll be close by. Now, what are some of the topics you've highlighted in past conferences? Because I believe this conference is your 17th? 18th conference. So what are just some of other topics that you've had in the past? And we have some graphics on that too.
Sure. Well, I mentioned some of the topics in this conference, and we're building on things we've done in the last three. We had a conference that looked at sleep, getting good Z's, and it was how sleep is an issue starting with infants and going through every stage of a woman's life.
Right.
We looked at genetics last year. Can the Chains Be Broken conference, and we're looking at genetics this year. And 2 years ago we looked at stress, and again we didn't go into these issues about food in those conferences in any depth. And we asked people who attended those conferences what issues concern them, what did they want to learn more about, and food was one of the issues, and eating behaviors.
Right.
So we were trying to deliver what people want.
Which is great, because people will learn more from what they want to hear and be more likely to attend. And I know you're already getting registrations for this conference because I think it is a topic that touches all of us. Now, what if somebody saw one of these like Catching Z's and they know sleep is an issue in their life and they want more information, but they missed the conference? Or the one on genetics last year. How could they still find out information from those?
They can. We videotaped the conferences, and we have both DVDs, video DVDs, and audio CDs of the conference. And if people want to order those recordings, we will send them with the conference materials, because at the conference we have a printed packet with the PowerPoint slides and a bibliography of resources so that people can learn more than they can learn that one day.
Right.
And when you show the website at the end, people can go online and order. They can call our office and place an order by phone. And on our website, there's also a mail-in order form,
Right.
Not just for those three conferences, but for other programs that we've done.
Okay, and that's a pretty inexpensive kind of thing that people shouldn't be put off by, the cost, because they're pretty inexpensive, and it's a great way to find out that information if you didn't even know they were happening in past years.
Thanks for the plug.
No
But they
problem.
are very reasonable. We try, even the conference, we try to make it reasonable so that people who don't have organizations for which they work can reach into their own pockets and not feel that they're, going to have to borrow money.
Right, and it's a full-day conference, and lunch is included.
And parking and materials.
Right, right, and these wonderful speakers about important topics. So, all good things. So now, the name of the organization is Women's Health Virginia, but girls' wellness is also a top priority. So, what are you doing in the area of girls' wellness?
Okay.
And I think we do have some slides about some of the conferences you've had lately that specifically address girls' wellness.
Right. We have a Young Women's Initiative, which starting at younger than women,
Right.
and looking at issues that are affecting girls, teens, and teens transitioning into adulthood. And we've looked at risk-taking behaviors. We've looked at how athletics is important, and not just athletics, but physical activity and athletics, both the positives and the negatives, because we want to help girls avoid injury.
Right. And so much has been on recently about injury with boys, but you don't hear about girls. And girls are having just as many injuries as boys are, and it's sort of like no one's talking about it.
Exactly. I mean, concussions are very big for girls. They don't play football in great numbers, but they get it when they're playing volleyball and they go down on the ground and they hit their heads, or they get it when they're playing soccer and head the ball.
Right.
Soccer injuries, girls' knees, ACL injuries are, terrific.
Yep.
I mean, the numbers are huge, and there is evidence of, a number of top athletes who, by the time they get out of college and have had 3 or 4 ACL operations, have trouble walking by the time they're 25 years old. And I see that as tragic, and it's avoidable largely.
Yes, it is. And one of the ones that we didn't talk about was that TV to Twitter, was the effect of the media on teens. And I think that's an interesting topic, because I remember back in the day when I was doing education in the community, and we did a whole conference on media and teens. And I could laugh at that now, because that was before, that was before Twitter, and that was before Facebook, and that was before a lot of other issues that are today. So an issue that was difficult back then is 100 times more difficult today.
It is. I mean, the internet, the digital diary that everybody has, you put stuff on Facebook and you think, oh, it's gone. It isn't. It's out there forever.
Forever.
But you asked about teens. We have a couple of other initiatives. These are our past conferences, and we've built on some of them. The Getting Good Z's conference, for example. One of the issues we looked at is the importance of sleep for teens and how teen sleep patterns are different from younger children and from adults. Their biological clocks, their circadian rhythms are different. And parents think that kids are staying up, playing with their computers or whatever. The truth is, teens don't go to sleep as early as they did when they were younger because their body clocks aren't ready to shut down. And so we're working with the Virginia Academy of Sleep Medicine to educate both educators, school leaders, and administrators, medical leaders, and parents on some of the issues regarding teens and how insufficient sleep has been researched and has been shown to be connected to more car crashes, more risk-taking behavior, unfortunately suicidal ideation, and of course there's anecdotal evidence, I haven't seen very much hard evidence, but anecdotal evidence that teens just don't perform in school as well in those early morning classes because their brains aren't awake.
Right. And so what's happening today is that some school districts are actually changing their hours for high school students and making them a little later. And my daughter lives in Fairfax, and that's one of the things they're instituting for September is later times for the high school students. So this is something that, it's great that you're working on this, because this is something that parents and school districts really need to grapple with.
I agree. And a lot of parents, I mean, it's going to cause some reshuffling if they have younger kids as well as high school students.
Right.
But, when you think about the long-term benefits, we're hopeful that schools will respond. In this central Virginia area, the schools do start at different times, but there has been movement, I know, in Charlottesville and Albemarle. They have a later start time than many other districts. The other teen issue that I'd like to mention is one that is a priority for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And there's activity at the state level in the health department. It's the HPV vaccines.
Right.
And this is the first cancer vaccine, which to me is tremendous.
It is. It's very exciting.
And
very exciting.
And there's been resistance to, having young women and young men get it because the target age is starting at 12 years old, and that is before most children, and I will call them children, are exposing themselves to the virus. But the importance is to get immunized before you're exposed.
Yes.
Just like kids get immunized for measles when they are 2 years old before they're likely to be exposed.
Exactly.
So our message is that this is cancer prevention, and that kids who are teens now can have a lot happier adulthood if they don't have to go through some of the fear of diagnosis that our generation has had to do.
Absolutely. And so it's interesting how you're doing this, because what you're really doing is working with providers and helping them to work with their patients and the parents of their patients. So, I mean, that's that's great. And I know I met the pediatrician who actually is the person on the DVD that's used for this program, and she's amazing. And I think that's what you need. You need sort of like a doctor talking to doctors.
That's exactly our thought, that, peer-to-peer education, it's well and good that I'm passionate, but I'm not a physician. And I think when we use physicians who say, these are the questions that I get from my patients, and this is how I answer them, it can really help another physician or a nurse or health educator say, gee, that's easy for me to do. And it's easy to incorporate when you know that somebody else has used a message effectively.
Right, so I think it's a great program, and it's another wonderful thing that you're doing at Women's Health Virginia. So you mentioned, so that's some of the education, and I mean, we don't have all day, so let's move on. You mentioned community-based research.
Right.
So again, you have a small office, so how are you doing this? What kind of research?
Well, there are a couple of things. And we've done some of this over the years, sometimes a little more commitment of resources when we've had them and some less. But we actually started out our research by doing a telephone survey of women to find out what health information they use, their satisfaction with it. Who do they go to when they have questions about health issues? If they read something and they don't understand it, who do they turn to say, what does this mean? And we used that survey to educate providers about how important they are in conveying information to patients. Women want to hear from their doctors or from specialists about the issues that concern them. And we know that doctors don't feel they have the time to talk like that, and some doctors don't have the skill.
Yes, right.
But we figure if we can get providers thinking about the importance of their role, even if they say, please go talk to my nurse, because we know nurses are trained to talk to patients in a different way. But to get the doctors involved in that education process. But the other kind of community-based research that we've done is focus groups and listening sessions being a little less formal than focus groups, to hear from women about the issues that they see for themselves, for their families, for their friends, for their kids, so that we can begin to develop our education programs, our efforts at drawing other organizations in to work with us to address real identified issues that are important to the women and girls in this state.
So it's a real grassroots,
Exactly.
sort of from the bottom up, saying this is the information we need, as opposed from the top down.
Exactly.
But you're also working on a new research initiative, aren't you, with other researchers?
We are. We decided that there's a lot of research out there that has not been reported, or it's not being used except by the researcher who collected the data. So we've started a project to reach out to researchers, I guess is the way to put it. We are contacting people in various universities and colleges who are in diverse fields, not just medical fields, sociology, psychology, women's studies, to see what research they've done, what data they've collected about women and girls in Virginia. And we hope to, first of all, see where the data gaps are and see if we can encourage researchers who want to learn more and help really give us a better picture about women's and girls' health in Virginia to do some of this gap-filling data collection and research. But then we also are asking these people, when we contact them, would you want to do some more research regarding women's and girls' wellness issues in Virginia? Do you have graduate students that you supervise? Do you want to do this work? Do you want to work with other researchers to build, as we see it, a fruitful collaboration among researchers in Virginia? And they can bring their diverse talents together, and hopefully we can get a lot more done than any one person would do by him or herself.
Sure. And that connecting piece, that connecting tissue is what's missing and what you're putting in there, which is really great. But that sort of like leads us into the next thing, which is the third prong. You said education, community-based research, but collaboration. And through all of this, we've been hearing collaboration. So let's talk a little bit about the kinds of collaboration you do. So you've talked already about reaching out to research. So who are some of the other groups, organizations, establishments, whatever that you work with?
Sure. Well, first of all, I didn't mention the SLEEP
Right.
project, and that is truly a collaborative effort with the Sleep experts because they have the expertise. We have some knowledge about how to do the outreach and connecting to communities. And our mission statement says connecting Virginians to improve women and girls' health and well-being. So we're that connect the dots person.
Right.
Anyhow, some of the other groups that we work with, I mean, there are so many, but they're as diverse as the Girl Scouts and moms clubs and hospital systems and health educators and school nurses, just to name a few. For example, we've got some projects going on with a local sorority, alumni sorority, to do a program during Women and Girls Wellness Month, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is really a collaborative effort month-wise, but to do a program on the issues facing girls in Central Virginia and some of the programs that are helping them make better choices, transition towards adulthood with better skill sets to become healthier and stronger women. And
so who else is part of that collaboration? So you have this women's sorority,
right?
Not a college sorority.
Yeah, and we've got Planned Parenthood, Girls on the Run, and Sarah. So they have 3 different types of programs working with teens, and we hope to get a discussion going about how these many issues have a sort of connectivity for these young girls.
Right, and that program I know is coming up in a couple of weeks, and I plan to be there because it's something I'm, again, very interested in. And so another thing that you do, which is very collaborative, is in April, because that's Women and Girls Wellness Month, and I think we have a little graphic on that. That's just the logo for it, but explain what that is.
Okay. We brought together about 50 organizations in 2002 with the idea of creating an observance, a celebration of women and girls' wellness. Everybody, well, maybe not everybody, but most people have heard of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Stroke Awareness Month. And we thought, it's great to focus on these diseases, but again, it is single issues, one disease, and not connecting the dots. And there are many organizations doing wonderful things, both on diseases that didn't have their own months, but also who are working to really create healthier girls and women who are not, in those boxes already.
Right.
And we thought, let's have a celebration here in Virginia where we could get out, one, a positive message about wellness, that it's not just disease prevention, but it's developing the skills and interests and information use to make better decisions about your health, get health care when you need it, eat better, sleep better, and so on. But also to get people thinking about how all of these organizations that have their individual missions really are part of a bigger picture that Women and Girls Wellness Month is about, that they are all players in improving women and girls' wellness. We have our individual missions, but we have the same goal, and that's improving wellness.
And so you're getting, by promoting this, you're getting all of these organizations to focus on this one month, not that they're not doing anything else the other time, but to especially think about in this 1 month, what can they do? And then how does that get publicized, and how do people know about it?
Well, we publicize it on our website and in traditional and social media, and some of the participating organizations are going to help us publicize their involvement in this bigger enterprise. We also involve businesses because, people very often think that health improvement is only the province of nonprofit organizations and health professionals and maybe the schools if we want to go there. But we realize that business cares about having healthy employees. They care about their own families being healthy. And this is a way for us to engage them in getting out the message, for them to be able to say to their communities, we care about women and girls' wellness. And many of them are supporting us with contributions to further our education and research efforts during this month. And then we also highlight their participation, because it's so important to get people to think about how everybody in Virginia can be part of improving women and girls' health and wellness.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as people listen to you talking about all of these things that we've touched upon right now, they may be thinking you have this huge office in Central Virginia. I mean, it's like, whoa. But that is not the case. So you are located your office is in Charlottesville. And I know you depend on support for everything you do. So let's talk about that a little bit. Who does the work?
Well, we have a fabulous bunch of dedicated volunteers who bring their skills to work for us. We also have been very lucky to work with UVA and have UVA interns who get class credit for spending time working with us. Some of our volunteers, I think, may not think of themselves as volunteers, but the health professionals who help us plan the conferences, who plan the education programs, who speak at these programs, are all part and parcel of how we can get stuff done. And when we talked about that research collaborative potentially, those researchers will help us get that stuff done. It's not going to be the people who are, in our organization,
Right.
but bringing those folks together, it'll further our mission. We are a volunteer-based organization, so that's the lifeblood. And then and then of course we need some lifeblood to keep the money flowing.
But if people were interested in volunteering, what do they need to know?
That we try to figure out what their skills and interests are and how those skills and interests can fit with what our needs are. I am a believer that people who have college degrees and are interested in education, for example, should be able to use their educational professional skills or knowledge, and even if they haven't been professionals, that they should be involved with education. I say everybody licks envelopes at some points or puts stamps on or whatever, but we can get high school students, hopefully, or college students who want to do that, or people who don't want to do something that engages their minds. But it is so important to
match the
match
person
the skills.
to what they're interested in, and for them to learn stuff along the way. And
Exactly.
whether they're, like you said, a high school student or a retired person like myself, or anyone in between, because I know your volunteers fit into those places, but they also are people who have full-time jobs and are working, but this is something that they see a niche for themselves because they care about it, and there's something that they can contribute.
Exactly, and they can bring the skills. Some of them bring the professional skills that they use at their work to help us, and others are bringing skills they've developed that they're not using at their work that they want to bring. But we will try to work with anyone who's interested and their schedules. Many of our volunteers don't work in the office. You mentioned people who work full-time. A lot of the things that they can get involved in is they can do in their free time at home, at night, or on a weekend. And if we need to meet outside of business hours, we do that.
Okay, and so if they're interested in doing that, they can contact you. And again, we're going to put that information up in a little while. Now, Women Health Virginia receives no government support.
Right. We occasionally have gotten a little bit, but for a
little
specific
grant
project.
kind of thing.
Right, but no flow of money coming
Okay,
in.
so what kind of support do you have that helps you to accomplish all this?
Well, I have to say that is one of the great challenges for any nonprofit organization, especially a small one that doesn't have a national organization behind it doing a lot of advertising. But we depend on individual contributions, contributions from business, sponsorship for our conferences, foundation support. We kid around that we keep looking under the rocks and looking for that rainbow with the pot of gold, but we write a lot of letters, and write a lot of proposals to bring money in. We also do fundraising events.
Okay, so I want to talk about one because this is one that I've been on the planning committee for the last couple of years, and that's called Take Time, THYME, like the herb, for women, and it's an amazing dinner. It takes place every year in November or December, depending on where we can get a place for it. And what happens on that evening that's so great is that 4 separate chefs actually cook 4 different parts of the meal, and then there's wineries that have wine to accompany that. So you're getting a 4-course meal with wine, and each part of that has been prepared by one chef from the Charlottesville area. And these chefs are all in their kitchen together, working together. They want to produce something really incredible because they're cooking in front of their peers. And it is, I've said, I know that one night is going to be the best meal I will eat that entire year. It is great. And then there are raffles and there are all kinds of other things to help raise money for the organization. The chefs come out and they talk about what they've prepared and what, all the ingredients, and then vineyards come out and they talk about why they paired their wine with that, and it's really a great evening if you like food, if you like wine, if you just like to have a great evening out with your friends. You can go as women only, you can go as couples, you can go as any way you want to. I mean, it's just fun, and there are tables together, and we have a blast. And I know this past year, I actually brought a couple of new couples that have never come with me before, and they were thanking me so much for telling them about this event. And I'm thinking, well, why didn't I tell them about this event before? I mean, I've always brought friends with me, but this time there was new people who have never done this before, and it's great.
Well,
It's
I am
great.
glad that you are such a great promoter of the event. And I have to say, we have gotten tremendous support from the chefs in the Charlottesville area. I think they bring a passion to the event, not just about food, but about supporting Women's Health Virginia. And some chefs have come back more than once. I don't like to, ask them too often because they really are going out of their way when they're running their restaurants
Right.
to spend the night with us. But, one chef said to me, "You haven't asked me to do that dinner again." And I said, "I'll call you for next year."
Right. And then there are that's a big fundraiser, but then there are lots of smaller fundraisers. Like I know that in the middle of April 16th, you're going to be at Trump. Well, you're not going to be at Trump
I
Winery.
will be there,
Well,
actually.
Yeah, me too. But at Trump Winery, they will be doing an evening of fundraising for you. So you want to just mention what will happen there?
Sure. Trump has a Third Thursday music series, and we have been selected to be the beneficiary of that evening. They'll have music. Michael Coleman will be the musician. They'll have their wine, obviously, and there'll be food, both light fare, cheese plates, and charcuterie, but also they've started serving a three-course dinner for those who want a three-course dinner.
Oh, wow.
And the 20% of what people buy will be donated to Women's Health Virginia.
Which is great.
Yeah. And if
Which
people
is
want to
great.
learn about that, they could either go to our website or go to the Trump Winery website.
Okay, so let's put up the last slide now, because we've been talking about if you want more information, this is how you get it. So here is the slide that we've been talking about, and so that has the website on it. It has a phone number on it. If you want to volunteer, if you want to get a CD or a DVD, if you want more information about the dinner, the conference, the Trump Winery, anything at all, this is where you would get in touch. And I would make suggestions like, get on your mailing list. And you also have a quarterly newsletter, right?
Right. It's an e-newsletter, so
But
people.
you're not, right. Just
We're not going to bombard people's inboxes with a lot of stuff. If people get on our mailing list also, we will send them announcements that might not be in the newsletter, for example, about the conference, to remind them that it's coming up and how to get tickets and things like that. People can also email us if they don't want to navigate our website or they have a quick question. They can email us as well as calling or looking on the website.
right, and they can also like you on Facebook.
They certainly can. And I will make another little put. We were talking about raising money and so on. On the website, we also have a page where people can go and buy some merchandise for us. I mean, I brought one of our T-shirts.
Talking about merchandise, hold it up, because it takes
Women
a
and Girls
second for
Wellness
them
Month
to get.
T-shirts.
So you can see, and that also has the information on the bottom, womenshealthvirginia.org. So, yep, I see it up there.
Okay,
so good
good.
job. You did a good job modeling that.
And we've got other little things like women pins and so on
Right.
that don't provide a lot of money, but it's a good, I think people like to show that they're supporting us also when
Right.
they buy these things.
And you certainly have my support, unending support. And Mimi, I really appreciate you so much coming here, outside of Charlottesville, taking the trip, and sharing your enthusiasm for Women's Health Virginia, because you have accomplished so much. I hope that as we were preparing for this, you'd look back and said, oh my God, we've really done a lot here.
Well, thank you. I have to say I appreciate all that you're doing for the organization now, including inviting me today, and your passion and your excitement, because I think that's one of the things about Women's Health Virginia that has made it work, that people who have participated in the organization, whether they're students or women of our generation.
Or men. Right, to participate, you could be a man and volunteer.
Exactly. That it's an energy, that it's synergy, that people, spark an energy in other people because they know that they're all working towards a common goal. And this little organization that started from nothing, has lasted now for, I guess we're going to be 16 years officially incorporated. So we're proud of it, and we thank all of our supporters, where they've given time, treasures, ideas, professional support, because that's what's made it work.
Well, nothing's made it work as much as you have, and so I really appreciate that, and again, for taking the time to speak with us. And I thank you for watching This Week at the Lake, and I invite you to make This Week at the Lake part of your regular viewing habit, which you can do every morning at 8:30 and 9:30, and every evening at 7 and 8 p.m., all on Lake Monticello's own channel 977 and on YouTube. So for the Lake Monticello's Broadcasting Group, I'm Mona Orange. Have a great week.